What's up, my friend? Welcome back to another video. And today let's talk about a question that is asked quite a bit, and that is which type of library is better, a loop library or a multi-sampled library? So quickly, let's just define the difference. A loop library is one that records pre-recorded performances of rhythms, of specific phrases, basically entire performances that can be looped over and over again. Think of like Apple loops, or think of, any regular beat that you might want to loop, like a drum groove or something. It's already a pre-recorded or pre-programmed performance that can be looped over and over again, and that makes things super easy. You just drag in the loop, you set it to play, and then it just sounds great right away. Versus a multi-sampled instrument basically is taking every single note that that instrument can play, recording that note by note individually, and then mapping that over the course of your keyboard, your MIDI controller. So if you play an A, you're going to hear an A. If you play a C, you're going to hear a C. Whereas if it was a loop or a phrase, then if you play a note, it might play an entire phrase of music, an entire melody, an entire chord progression, whatever it might be. Whereas multi-sampled libraries are very transparent in pressing a note and you hear that note on your sample library, right? So then the question becomes, which one is better for me and my music? The benefits of loops are basically the speed, like the convenience, right? Being able to drag in a performance that's already been done for you, that saves a lot of time. Unless you're really good at programming beats and MIDI in really quickly, loops are going to be a great option for you because it's just super fast and super convenient. So time is a big factor. The other thing is realism as well. A lot of loops contain pre-recorded phrases that are actual musicians playing those phrases. So one developer that comes to mind is Sonic Kinetic. They do really great work with orchestral libraries, and the majority of their lineup is comprised of loop-based libraries or phrase-based libraries. So you play a certain note, the instruments all play a phrase, you play different notes, they play different phrases, and you can adjust the keys and stuff in real time as they're playing. It's really cool. But yeah, it just sounds super realistic and really nice because they're recording the actual phrases that these musicians are playing, right? So that's a big plus there as well. Now, the plus of multi-sampled libraries is flexibility. So because you have access to one note at a time, you can craft your own melodies and chord progressions one note at a time, and you don't have to rely on pre-recorded loops because those might be playing notes that you don't want or chords that you hadn't envisioned in mind in the first place. And that could actually waste you time if you have to chop out specific parts of the loop to replace with different chords and stuff like that. That actually can waste more time. So flexibility is sort of the biggest pro, I would say, to multi-sample libraries. You can craft your own melodies, your own chord progressions from scratch, basically playing one note at a time. And if it's scripted really well, like with legato and shorts and stuff, then you can create convincing performances relatively easily. The other pro, I think, is not being overly influenced by the musical material. So if you're trying to play a single note, then again, you're going to hear a single note. But if you play a loop or a phrase, then they're going to play a pre-recorded performance, which might take you musically in a different place than you had envisioned originally, and you might forget what you were thinking in the first place. So that's something to consider as well, right? Loop libraries and phrase libraries are wonderful if they are in the niche or in the style, the genre of music that you are trying to aim for. If not, then they can pull you away from your musical direction entirely, and that's usually not what you want, right? So multi-sample libraries are really good because they give you the sound of that instrument and that pitch, and only that sound of the instrument and that pitch. So you can weigh the pros and cons there. One of the cons of multi-sample libraries as well is the realism. So if it's not scripted very well, like if there's a huge delay, if the legato sounds a little choppy or whatever, then those performances may sound a little bit less realistic. Whereas loops and phrases, a lot of those are pre-recorded performances, so those will naturally sound better because the musicians are actually playing those phrases and those loops. But all that being said, which is my personal preference? My personal preference has always been, and most likely will continue to be, multi-sampled libraries. And for the reasons I explained above. The first is usually because it gives me the sound I'm looking for, and only that sound that I'm looking for. It doesn't introduce new things, new notes, new chords into the phrase or into my musical ideas, and therefore turn me away from what I'm aiming for in the first place. And second of all, just the flexibility I get from being able to play whatever I want and then hearing that come to life through my virtual instruments, that kind of gets me up in the morning. I think that's why we get into virtual orchestration in the first place, is we're trying to get our musical ideas from what we hear in our head into our DAW through virtual instruments and make it sound as realistic and as musical as possible, right? And multi-sampled sample libraries nowadays can get us there very, very quickly. Loops can as well, for sure, but again, you're limited there in terms of flexibility just a little bit. So multi-sampled libraries, I'm willing to compromise a little bit of realism, and if the scripting isn't as great, then fine. But the libraries I love have been programmed very well. It's the Cinematic Studio series. Cinesamples has some great libraries as well. They're programmed in a way that's intuitive for me to understand and to play. They're fun, they're inspiring, and I enjoy using them all the time. So if you ask yourself which is better for you, you have to ask yourself which approach would you personally gel with more. Do you want speed and efficiency, but are willing to sacrifice a little bit of flexibility? Well, then loops and phrases might be your best friend. If you're on a deadline, a project that really needs a score cranked out very quickly, then loops and phrases, phrase builders, right? Those sorts of engines will suit you very well. But if you have the time to pour into the details of orchestration, you want control of every single note, of every single velocity, the length of the notes, all that stuff, then multi-sample libraries will serve you better in the end, because that flexibility is worth it. Crafting those performances, taking the time to really make sure every single note speaks as you want it to, writing the modulation, the expression, all of that stuff contributes to a more musical performance. And it like all of that adds up to that final polish, that final 5% of an amazing performance in your mockup. So hopefully that kind of made sense. Let me know your thoughts below if you prefer loops or multi-sample libraries and why. And if you're curious about my favorite sample libraries, then definitely download my sample library buyer's guide down below in the description box. It's completely free, and I've organized all my favorites through the different sections like strings, winds, brass, percussion. I've also included some other sections like pianos and ethnic libraries, jazz libraries as well, and the pricing, so you know exactly what you're getting into. And I want to give that to you as a gift for checking out this video today. So thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Take care, and I'll see you very soon. Bye-bye.